Welcome back to Google class. Dear students, today I am going to discuss with Transfer of Property Act. Okay. Now, rights of buyer. Rights of buyer. Under the topic sales, rights of buyer before sale. Okay. Rights of buyer before sale. Same section 55 subclass 1A, 55 subclass 1B, 55 subclass 1C, 55 subclass 1D, 55 subclass 1E, 55 subclass 1G, 55 subclass X. These are all before sale. Rights of buyer also included. The same Bar Act. Okay, now number 1, to receive all information about material defects explained in the section 55 subclass 1A. Okay, so here the buyer is entitled to receive all information of any material defect in the property or in seller's title, that too of which the seller is aware and the buyer is not aware. Information is of two type. Number 1, latent defects and patent defects. Okay, the buyer has right to receive information about the latent defects from the seller. Okay, that means caveat emptor, is having rights. Okay, then second, to inspect the documents. Okay, if buyer to inspect the document, so section 55 subclass 1 subclass B explained about to inspect the documents. Okay, this is also rights of the buyer before sale of the property. Okay, so here the buyer has right to inspect all the documents pertaining to the property. The seller has to produce all such documents for the inspection. Okay, number 3, the question. To question, many questions. What type of question buyer will be asked? As section 55 subclass 1C explained about to question. The buyer is entitled to question the seller pertaining to the property and its title. Okay, because is having own property or any other person. Okay, the seller is bound to give the relevant answers for the questions asked by the buyer. Number 4, same agreement to sell. Same section 55 subclass 1D explain the buyer pays any advance with an intention to purchase the property. He is entitled to receive acknowledgement for such payment. Okay, receipts or acknowledgement of any agreement, and also he is entitled to enter into agreement to sell. The terms and conditions shall be mutually decided by buyer and seller regarding the payment, mode of payment, sometimes cash, sometimes demand draft, sometimes checks. Okay, delivery of possession and the time and date of registration, etc. Okay, number 5, documents rights. Section 55 subclass 1E explained about rights of buyer. Documents. The buyer is entitled to receive the documents relating to the property after completion of the sale until the sale is completed. He is also entitled the documents protected by the seller between the date of agreement to sell and the date of registration. Okay, and next point, public charges. This part is explained about section 55 subclass 1G, public charges. So another rights, the buyer need not pay any public charges up to the date of the actual delivery registration. Okay, it is duty of the seller to pay all such public charges. That means electricity charges, water taxes, property tax, etc. until the date of completion of sale. Okay, and another right to sue. Buyers having right to sue Section 55 subclause 6 explain about right to sue. The seller violates any of the condition of the agreement to sell, the buyer is entitled to sue him for specific performance of contract and also to the damages. Damage suit also he has to claim. Okay. Next condition, debts and mortgage, etc. If the seller has any debts, mortgages, encumbrance, etc., he has to clear them all before date of completion of sale. The buyer is entitled to transfer the property without any encumbrance, okay, without any disputes, without any pending debts. Okay. And the last portion, rights of buyer before sale. Okay. Nemo dot quod non habet. If the seller is not authorized to sell the property, what happened? He is not a owner, he is not having any authority. Okay. But enter into the agreement including the buyer, and after entering into the contract, the buyer finds that the seller has no title. The buyer is entitled to sue the seller for damages and also for the recovery of the amount already paid, if any paid. Okay. The buyer is protected by law from all fraudulent transfers. Okay. The above rights are available before sale. Okay. Before sale means the seller, that means buyer receiving the property. Okay. Next, rights of the buyer after completion of sale. What are all? Number 1, delivery of possession. Number 2, documents. Number 3, entertainment. Number 4, same, nemo dot quod not habet, same thing only. So here, rights of the buyer after completion of sale, delivery or possession, own rights. Okay. As soon as the registration completes, the sales completes. Okay. If registration is complete, automatically sale also completes. The buyer is entitled for the possession of the property. The seller has to hand over the property to the buyer. All the documents related, everything at all. Okay. No need to retain. And second, documents. Documents means section 55 subclause 3 of TP Act. Documents means after the sale is completed, the buyer is entitled to get all the documents relating to the property. If the purchases a part of the property, then he is entitled to obtain the certified copies of the entire property. Okay. Third one, entertainment. Section 55 subclause 6 subclause A explain about entertainment. As soon as the sale completes, the buyer is entitled to the ownership and also to benefit of any improvement in or increase in value of the property and to the rents and profits thereof. Okay. Nemo dot quod dot habet. If a third person files the proceeding, know that point. If the third person files the proceedings before the court alleging that the seller has no right to sell the property, the buyer is entitled to sue and receive the damages and expenses from the seller. If that party succeeds, the buyer is entitled to receive the amount he paid to the seller along with court expenses and damages. Fine. Okay. These are all rights of the buyer after completion of the sale. Okay. And what are the liabilities of the buyer? Okay, we'll discuss. So here, liabilities of the buyer before sales. Okay. Number 1, to inspect. Number 2, inquire. To agreement to sale, and to give information or losses. So these are all before the sale. Okay. One by one we'll discuss. To inspect, it is the duty of the buyer to inspect the property, where it is available, where it is located. Okay. Inspect. It could not find any patent materials defects at his inspection at the time of agreement to sell. Afterwards, he cannot raise this objection. Okay. However, he has right to raise the objection in case of latent defects. Okay. And another, to inquiry. It is the duty of the buyer to inquire about the title and ownership of the property. He has to verify with the neighbors, relatives of the sellers, etc. Because sometimes he is pledged into the some pony or mortgage into the any mortgage, something like mortgage document. Okay, some any disputes before the court and all. So you must verify neighbors area. Okay, and relatives also. He has to verify the documents in the registration office, registration department also, because EC, encumbrance certificate, he has to apply and verify the survey number, whatever it may be. He has to question the seller for obtaining the information. Okay. And third point, agreement to sell. So, without obtaining proper document or receipt from the seller, the buyer should not pay any amount. Okay. He should enter into the agreement to sell when he pays the advance. Both the seller and buyer should discuss and decide the terms and conditions of the sale amicably. Okay. Prior conclusion avoids future conflicts, because after that discussion coming, now what will happen? Disputed land. Okay. So it is irritating. So that is why before enter into the agreement, the buyer and seller will sit and discuss amicably all terms and conditions. Okay. To give information, the buyer knows any fact about the property, that is any valuable ores, ores in the underground of the proposed land. He should disclose it to the seller. The buyer is bound to disclose to the seller any fact as to the nature or extent of the seller's interest in the property, of which the buyer is aware, but of which he has reason to believe that the seller is not aware, and which materially increases the value of such interest. So this to give information explained about in the section 55 subclass 5 subclass A, okay, of TP Act. And losses, the losses explained the section of 55 subclass 5 subclass A of the TP Act. If the property is delivered to the buyer at the time of agreement to sell, the buyer shall have to bear any loss arising from the destruction, injury, or decrease any value of the property, loss caused by the seller. Because, for example, if I am handed over to the any immovable property to the buyer, after that, if any happen, fire, something like whatever it may be, now, who is the liability? Buyer. Okay. So as per section 55 subclass 5C explained clearly. Okay. So these above all liabilities of the buyer, rights of the buyer before the sales. Okay. Let's see another part. Liabilities of the buyer after completion of sale. Liability of the buyer after completion of sale. Okay. What are the liabilities after completion of the sale? Buyers. Number 1, payment. Number 2, public charges. Number 3, part payment. Number 2, to bear registration charges. Number 5, income tax returns. Okay. We'll see one by one. Payment. The buyer is bound to pay or tender at the time and place of completing the sale the purchase money to the seller or such person as he directs. Number 2, public charges. At the time of final payment, the buyer has to verify whether the seller has paid all the public charges or not. If the seller has not paid any public charges or debts, etc., the buyer should compel the seller to pay such charges or debts. If the agreement to sell is concluded that the buyer should pay all public charges and debts, then buyer has to pay all such amounts for which the liability of of seller ceases. Okay. Third point, part payment. If property is passed to the buyer after part payment, that means advance plus remaining part of the due amount, it is the duty of the buyer to pay the remaining amount with the interest as per the terms and condition and the date fixed in the agreement, sale of agreement. Okay. If he fails to pay, the seller entitles to unpaid vendor's liability. Okay. I will discuss with this unpaid vendor's line in separate video class also. Then it is easy to understand. Okay. A charge on property continues until the buyer pays the amount with the interest. Okay. The unpaid vendor's line means a charge on the property continues until the buyer pays the amount with interest. Okay. The fourth point, to bear registration charges. It is the duty of the buyer to bear all registration expenses such as stamp duty, registration fees. Okay. Stamp duty means document, bonds. Registration means at the time of expenditures. Okay. Registration expenditures, etc. The fifth point, income tax returns. If property exceeds the limits of Income Tax Act and rules, this is the main reason. Okay. The buyer shall have to file income tax returns in time. Okay. If Wealth Tax Act or Gift Tax Act applies, he shall have to file consent return also. Okay. These are all liabilities of the buyer after completion of the sale. Okay. Okay, students. Now the rights and liabilities and liabilities of buyers and sellers, this complete portion is over. Okay. We'll discuss next class another definitions, separate caveat emptor is available. Okay, we'll discuss next video class. Okay students, take care, wish you all the best. Thank you.